Here we go. Hello, WeatherBrains, episode number 572, the pre-show for January 3rd, 2017.
Is this it? Can we start?
Yeah, sure. Go.
I'm gonna, the accelerant is reborn.
All right.
I'm tired of all this whining. Quit whining. There's no whining in meteorology.
This is going to be good. So there's your show. Yeah, show title right off the bat. There's no whining in meteorology. Would you like some cheese with that wine?
I already had a show title, Two Doctors and a Sue.
No.
Wow. So no, this is great. So we're going to have people that are going to be whining, and then Kevin's going to be mad because they are whining.
I'm so tired of this whining.
Before you know it, it's just going to blow up into something here. So you're mad about people whining about social media posts of 384-hour snowstorms.
Yes.
It's old. It is old. I'll admit it's getting stale. I think we've done all we can do. I can't do anything.
This is the turning point. This is it.
We shouldn't talk about this now. We should wait.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Well, I don't think it's the turning point. I think they're going to keep it up.
No. I mean, it's the turning point for us. I think the toothpaste is out of the tube.
Yeah. I think we just have to keep calling a spade a spade.
Yeah. We'll save this banter for the show here. This is where we're supposed to be sharing boring personal stories and humorous anecdotes and saying outrageous things.
So, well, I have something to fire the irritant. No, the accelerant.
Irritant.
That's a show.
I'm getting close to a rant on these daggum temperatures with the National Weather Service. This 5-minute
I like sort of the response they gave you. Like I was supposed to call you and tell you what they told me.
Well, their response, their response.
Well, wait, explain what you're talking about.
Well, what happened was we were on the verge of establishing the latest 90-degree temperature in Birmingham history in October or November, and the 5-minute data came out and it showed 90 clearly.
Yes,
and
I
blogged and wrote that we had broken the record, and James was like, "What the heck? I don't see a 90, I only see an 89." And so on the official data, there only was an 89. And so the response was that the 5-minute data is averaged differently than the regular observation. And so by 26.7 is not 90, whatever it is, 26.8 is. And so, we didn't get 90.
I don't buy that crap at all. That is just crap. It's really
show title.
Wow. And I had the same thing happen to me on a different day that happened to Bill, and I got the same sort of runaround. It's like, how in the world can you have equipment that has two different ways to calculate the daggum temperature? And then you want us to believe that you know anything about climate change? I don't think so.
Oh boy.
Yeah, go ahead. Wow. And then when you look at the specs on ASOS, and you find out that the accuracy is plus or minus 3.4 degrees. Excuse me. Whoa.
So that explains Jasper.
That's interesting.
Good Lord.
Is that's a true thing?
Yes.
3 point what?
3.4.
0.03.
Kidding.
I think something. Scientific at Atlanta in my kitchen is better than that.
And Bill, they tell us in their explanation that they calculate Celsius and convert to Fahrenheit. According to the ASOS manuals, they do everything in Fahrenheit and calculate back to centigrade Celsius. So which is it?
3.4 degrees is a good show title too.
Yeah.
Wow.
But you really need somebody from the Weather Service on here to gripe to.
I think you're on a different mic, Rick.
You're the wrong person to gripe to, Rick. This has got to go beyond local offices. I mean, this is deplorable. It really is. If you can't trust the 5-minute data, I mean,
why put it out there?
Why is it out there?
Well, and I noticed they took it off. On the website, it was the default look for a long time when it first. I mean, it hasn't been out very long, but it was the default when it came out. But now it's not. So it's probably because of you and me, Brian.
Well, it could be, and I hope so, because I mean, if it says 54 at 7:35, then why isn't that the low for the day or whatever?
And I've always understood, that we couldn't derive the low or the high from the hourly data, but
yes, absolutely, because it may occur between.
This is better.
But Bill, I even ran across one in which I can't remember if it was the low or the high was actually 2 degrees different from what was the official low or high. And it's like, what? That can't be. That's not conversion errors, I don't think.
I just thought it was funny that they thought I should have told you when they told me in the chat, and I should have called you and told you.
Yeah.
Ryan really is John C. Dvorak now, isn't he?
Yeah, no kidding. He is the John C. Dvorak of the weather world. We're going to rebrand this thing as Cranky Weather Geeks.
Yeah, it's not me anymore.
So, Dr. Myers,
I think Accelerant should have a cape. I think you need a cape. Yeah.
There's my good friend Laura Myers.
Yeah, I'm just checking to be sure she can hear us. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, you sound good. Kevin Laws, can you hear us okay?
He's muted.
Now, your test worked perfectly. You're muted.
Hold on 1 second.
Got earbuds. That's good, Kevin.
Look at that head. I wish my head was that symmetrical. I mean, that is a good-looking head.
Hey,
wow.
Let's don't get started on my head.
No, I've got
What's that?
I have potholes.
What's that? What's that study that came out about criminology? Is it phlebotomy or something like that?
I don't know, but look, I would shave my head if I looked like Kevin. I got potholes and I'm lopsided up there. It's horrible. So I have to cover it with this, little peach fuzz I've got. So
you have potholes?
Yeah. I mean, look how good. Look at Kevin's head. That thing is perfectly symmetrical.
It's not real.
It's beautiful.
It's a fake bald head.
Yeah. It's. I don't think it's real.
You can add to the show title list his head envy.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, this is going to be an epic show. I don't want this one to stop. I think we ought to just let this go all night long.
No, I hate
That's a lot of pressure, James.
Do that Fox show. I hate that.
No,
stop doing that, Kevin.
Well, if I get our weekend guy in, I'll make him do it. We have to hire somebody.
And we got Dr. Shepard on him. Everybody's on here 6 minutes early. This has never happened before. Wow.
Famous person in the room now.
Yes.
Good Lord, we'll break the podcast if we start this early.
Yeah, Marshall, notice he's already left. He glanced at all these people in this show, and man,
I'm out of here.
He didn't hesitate. He just took off running.
Smart man.
You're a wise man.
He thought he was in a pre-pro meeting for Weather Geeks.
Can you guys hear me?
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, sounded good.
Oh, yeah, I was just texting about Weather Geeks, but something interesting, but I gotta sit on it for a second.
I'm so glad to see you, Marshall. From the recent posts in Forbes, I was scared to death your head had exploded.
Yeah. My head has been exploding for a couple of reasons today. I'm going to try to contain myself.
Now, what you do, I'm an expert at this. You put duct tape. You get duct tape and you just wrap it around your head, and that holds it together during those periods where at any moment it's going to blow, and it's just going to spew blood and brain matter all over the walls and the floor, and somebody's got to clean this up, and it's just going to be bad. So duct tape has always worked for me.
Glenn Beck used to do that. Remember that? Yep. He had a sound effect that he would run when he was duct taping his head from exploding. That's what we get next show. Search for duct tape sound effect and
I'm going to step up for a second. I'm trying to adjust my lighting.
Okay.
That's a
and there's another good looking head. I mean, look, Dr. Shepard's head is symmetrical. I mean, I feel horrible when I see these guys. Most everybody in the weather enterprise, they have really good looking TV hair, like Dr. John Scala, or they have these perfectly symmetrical, bald heads up here. It's
egghead, James. Just say egghead. That's what we.
No, I mean, you guys have good-looking heads. I mean, I just feel bad. I mean, I'll look in the mirror and goodness, it's just like there's holes and lumps and it's bad. So I don't know what's up with that. We've got to wait until the TV joins us here, and that's going to be in 4 minutes. So, and we are, on YouTube, so we can't we're public, but we're not quite on television yet here, and then we'll get this thing started. But thank you guys for your time. This will be a good show. And Marshall, I know you got to go in 30 minutes. So
yeah, I've got till 10 tonight. Yep.
Okay, we'll give you as much of the floor as possible here because I want to hear a little more about the Forbes article and your thoughts on that. I saw that guy's Facebook page. Of course, I'm like everybody else. I got that over and over and over. And what they do, they'll send me a private message on Facebook. Hey, did you see this? Did you see this? Is this real? Is this really going to happen? And so what I have to decide, am I going to take the time to answer all of these people on these private messages? And it takes away from time that's very constructive that I desperately need. It's
Don't start now. Don't start.
No, I'm not. Look, I'm not.
His head's going to explode before the show starts.
That's
That's
right,
why
if you
that's
start,
okay.
James, duct tape.
If you start,
Okay.
I'm going to start, and then we're going to miss the whole show.
Okay, all right. So I'll
Did
start.
anybody tweet out a link for the show? I was going to retweet it.
I just did.
Rick did.
Who was that, Rick? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
Jane?
what really just got on my nerves about last night is they were dealing with some severe weather in central Georgia. And one of the guys in Macon that I know, one of the TV guys, was dealing with debunking this viral story when he really needed to be focusing on the severe weather. And that just ticked me off.
Right.
Right, and that ticks Kevin off, and we're all just going to start. This could be one of these great ones where everybody just starts yelling and screaming. And this is good live television right here.
Aubrey's asking for a mic check.
Oh, Aubrey, I'm sorry. Can you hear us? Uh-oh, we don't hear you. You look good. Your camera looks great. Bandwidth looks great, but we have no audio. And I'm so glad.
Did you
we
just tell her
checked
to
that.
sit there and look pretty? Is that what you just said?
I did. You said that. Please. Oh boy.
By the way, James, I'm glad you're back.
Why?
When I left the studio the other day for supper, I was accosted by a raccoon.
Ooh.
No,
Show title.
we have another show title. No, one night I had 6 of them out here. They come out, at the end of the 10 o'clock news. And what happens when the cat food bowl is empty down there? They want me to fill the cat food bowl up because I've got They know I've got cat food in the back of my truck. One night I had 6 raccoons, 2 and our 3 cats. We have 2 black cats and a gray cat out here. And it was the most bizarre menagerie. And also there's a gray fox, and the gray fox doesn't get close to us.
Yeah,
but I have reason to believe the gray fox eats that cat food down there.
I'm a witness to that. He did. He was eating the food one night.
Yeah,
But James, you're too young to be a cat lady now. Come on.
But the raccoon actually came up to me within about 2 feet of me.
Oh, yeah. Look, one night I was getting cat food out of the back of my truck, and I felt one of those cats rubbing up against my legs. I looked down there. It was one of those stinking raccoons.
Things are rabid. They're going to bite you.
So many show titles.
There's another show title. So many show titles.
Yeah, really.
Can I borrow some of these?
Only with proper credit.
We'd be on.
Well, we want to do the mashup show. We're going to make it happen.
All right. So welcome to our television audience. We're going to start this thing right now because we are all here and all together. So recorder number 1, recorder number 2, and here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is WeatherBrains, episode number 572, first show of 2017. This is for January 3rd. I'm James Spann. Thank you so much for joining us this week. We had the year ender with Greg Carbon, greatest show of the year. He goes down through his top 10 meteorological memories. But before we carry on, we have this quick message that you need to listen to.
We interrupt this program for a CBS Radio Net Alert Bulletin.
Psst. Hey, kid.
Who, me?
Take a look at this.
Whoa. This professional-looking graphic says there'll be a largest of all-time, record-setting, polar vortex-induced superstorm developing in the upper Midwest, converging with a never-before-seen southern stream mega shortwave over the southeast, merging with an out-of-season Category 7 tropical system off the northeast coast, encountering an omega block-induced 1,250 millibar cold air high-pressure bubble over the northeast, affecting billions of people in March 2017.
You know what it means, don't you? Chicago, 3 degrees above absolute zero. 120,000 foot-top thunderstorms from New Orleans to Atlanta. And the antenna on the top of the new Freedom Tower in New York will be the only thing sticking out of the snow.
That's a classic.
Whoa. I need to share this professional-looking graphic on my social media accounts right away. Where do I find it?
Right here on the International Weather Authority Service Facebook page.
Remember, friends don't let friends share ridiculously long-range forecasts on social media. Only you can prevent social meteorology hype. This message from the Ad Council and anyone with a lick of sense.
Social media, where we can spread the word and grow our reach and find our fans in their newsfeed. Let's get social.
Okay, so now we can start this show, and you might have an idea. We'll be talking about social media and posting 384-hour snow forecasts and crankiness and oh, man, I'm excited. There's so much good going on here. We're just going to jump right into the show. We've got our regular guest here, except for Nate, our regular panelist. But Bill Murray, I'm going to go right to you, and let's bring in Marshall because he's got a limited time set, and I want to hear from him first.
Can you come back to me, James? I'm sharing a 384 GFS. Let me get that tweeted out, and I'll be right back. Yeah, James.
Please click like and share.
Yeah, that's right. My Google AdSense needs some dollars. So, yeah, James, the guests tonight need no introduction. I'll start out with Laura Myers. She's a renowned social scientist and a lot in meteorology, emergency management, law enforcement. Dr. Laura's at the University of Alabama, who's winning their basketball game right now, 30-17, and playing in the national championship game a week from Monday night, this coming Monday night. So we're looking forward to that. But Laura, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Bill.
It's nice to have you here. And I'll go over to Kevin Laws, who is the SOO at the National Weather Service in Birmingham. Good friend of the show. Kevin, welcome back.
Bill, thanks. Good to be here.
It's good to have you here. You're at the office tonight, I see.
I am working late.
There you go.
Must be snow in the forecast, right?
Oh boy, yeah, I'm sure we'll be talking about that. And our official guest.
By the way, Bill, you know why it's going to snow in the deep south this week, don't you?
No, it's because I bought movie tickets in Montgomery Saturday night. No, that seals the deal. So I will lose my $32 officially when it snows 5 inches in Montgomery and doesn't do anything in Birmingham. So, but anyway, our final guest tonight needs no introduction to the show. Of course, he is the host of Weather Geeks, a professor at the University of Georgia, past president of the AMS, among all sorts of other accomplishments that he's had. Dr. Marshall Shepard, welcome back.
Hey, happy to be here, guys and ladies.
And you showed up all over my Facebook page today, creating some brouhaha. So, and then I hear there's another brouhaha that has had your head in danger of blowing up today. So, start with the Forbes story.
Yeah.
Talk about that for a minute.
You know, what really, I guess I do rant sometimes, but what really got under me today was just this. I think you all are aware of the fact that there was this viral Facebook post from some guy in my state that was talking about 10.4 inches of snow in a location, very specific forecast, talking about blizzard conditions, talking about the fact that because the European model is always better than the GFS, this is definitely going to happen. It really bothered me. Let me tell you why it just really bothered me more than some of the social meteorology that I see. Last night in central Georgia, as many of parts of Alabama as well were under severe weather threat. I mean, and I saw colleagues, I was on certain NWS chat, media colleagues were dealing with this severe weather threat. Yet at the same time, some of them were also having to debunk and deal with this viral post that went forth, and that just really bothered me because we kind of have fun with this and we know it's a problem, and we've kind of dealt with this before, but in that moment I realized, and that's why I wrote the Forbes article, that this stuff can be a safety issue. It can be a threat, because if we have people dealing with these types of things and not focusing on sort of an immediate threat at hand, my argument is that even the slightest sort of distraction can perhaps cost a life. And I know all of you appreciate the importance of saving lives and property. That's kind of what we do is in this business. So that first of all got under my skin. Now, one of the things that I did mention in that article is, I didn't want to ridicule the guy. He said he was a weather enthusiast, he described himself on his page as a weather nerd. So we all have been there. We all are that. We're weather geeks ourselves. So I try not to kind of come down hard on the person, but I did come down hard on the irresponsibility of sharing that information. And so that's really what got under my skin today.
So Dr. Laura, is this sort of stuff really a distraction? We all believe it is, but from a social science standpoint, is it?
It is a bit of a distraction, especially when it's events that capture people's attention. And snow is a big one. A winter weather event is a big one. And so when those first models start coming out, several days in advance, if they see something interesting like that, they run with it. And that's what the public tunes into. And I think the big issue is the public doesn't understand the uncertainty that many days out, and they don't understand the differences in the models.
So I guess I'll ask Rick Smith this question. Does this contribute to the, to this idea that weather forecasters don't get it right 50% of the time and still get paid to do our jobs?
I think it does. I mean, I think there's a lot more members of the collective they now with social media. You've been standing in line at a grocery store or somewhere. They say it's going to snow 8 inches. They say this, they say that. Well, who's they? People don't know who they is. It's just weather information that's out in the cloud. And now with like the guy that Dr. Shepard talked about and all these other people that are out there, there's a lot more input into that cloud. So there's a lot more numbers. And it'd be very interesting, and maybe Laura knows something more about this than I do, but the psychology of people. If you want it to snow, you're probably going to gravitate toward those higher numbers, wish casting. And think, well, they said it was going to snow 8 inches and we didn't get it. And so I think it does. I think it harms the whole weather enterprise because it is more complications and more numbers thrown into the mix there that people remember, don't remember, get mixed up. And in the end, they don't really know where their forecast came from or who said what was going to do what. Most people don't.
So Marshall, you equated it to fake news, and fake news has been in the news a lot lately, especially after a guy took a gun and went into a pizza restaurant in Washington, D.C. based on a news story that he read about Hillary Clinton. So is this really at the level of the same thing that we're talking about when we talk about fake news?
Yeah, and Rob Dale, colleague, we quibbled a little bit on this today because he was arguing it. He didn't like my characterization of it as fake news. And I said, his point was, well, this guy's taking GFS model information that's out there and putting it out there. So how is that fake news? My counter to that was that, yeah, he took that information, but then he described it as a blizzard. We know that blizzard has a very specific meaning. Now, I think it's fake news kind of anchored to that. And as I've said many times, we in this field have dealt with the fake news phenomena for years, perhaps even decades now. So although it's in the news now, I think it's something that we all are experienced with. I made the point in the Forbes article that I think there are things that we can do. There, by the way, there are a couple of other really good perspectives out there on this by Chris Robbins at iWeatherNet and also at Brian Weather. I forget his last name, but Brian wrote a nice piece as well on a Medium blog with some other perspectives. And I think one of the arguments that Brian was making is that, we just got to kind of he was kind of more ticked at us as meteorologists and our general response. He was kind of saying, our response is more annoying than the social meteorology. I kind of quibble with that a little bit because, we care about our field and we want to get it right. I'm pretty sure doctors quibble with information that gets out there on health information. That just shows we're passionate about what we do. I didn't agree with that point, but the point I did agree with is that he did say that we've got to just take this opportunity to educate. And I think we all would agree with that. But let me just say what I said in the article. I think there are things that we can do. When I think a viral post reaches a certain critical mass of irresponsibility, I think that we do need to work with the Facebooks and the Twitters of the world in the same way that they're being more proactive on other types of fake news. Now, whether that means the AMS or the NWA needs to work with these social media companies to develop some perspective on this, I'm not even sure how we do it right away, and I'm not trying to regulate anybody and what their posts or limit their freedom of speech, but I do believe that there are some things that we can say and do about this.
I'm going to jump in respectfully and say that this cannot be done. And the reason why is Facebook cannot, and we've discussed this before about Google Plus, Facebook cannot come in and fork any part of their platform for one special interest, because the minute that they do it, they're going to have to do it for everybody, and they're not going to do it for everybody. And the only reason they're doing it, they've looked at this problem for a while, because I wrote about this a little while ago with regard to, especially right at the election. I said, okay, welcome political people, it's not so easy, is it, right? So, but they can't do it. And the only reason they've looked at this, they recognize that there's maybe a problem, that there's some influence, but the reason that they can't is they can't do anything for a special interest. The reason they're doing it in the political realm, and I'm absolutely certain of this, is they're trying to fend off regulation. This is in a position or an area where somebody can come in from Washington or wherever, and we're seeing this happening around the world. You look at China, or you look at the European Union, or anybody who's looking at Google or Facebook or whoever with any kind of filtering possibility or any kind of check or balance system, there's no way that they're going to put up with that. They can't put up with it. So this was smoke and mirrors, because they're not doing anything. They're subbing this responsibility out to somebody else, ABC News and Snopes and whoever it is. So they absolve themselves from any responsibility. Could you go and do that with the AMS or the NWA? In theory, you could, but again, they won't, because it speaks to a special interest.
Yeah, I would, Kevin, I think you make some very valid points, and that's why even I mentioned that my solution, I don't have a sort of a smoking gun solution on this, but some type of discussion needs to be had in terms of perspective. One of the things that have been floated around, I know you've talked about it on WeatherBrains, and we've talked about it, is this idea of digital seals. NWA's even gone down that road, but I think you see that with all due respect, I don't think it's really caught on. And really at AMS, we decided against it for some of the very reasons I don't think it has caught on. Because I don't think people really recognize, or frankly, in some cases, care about seals in the way that we use them more traditionally now in the TV world. So, that's probably stuff more for us than the public. So, it's a tough challenge, but I think the thing that we all agree upon is that we need to try to use this as an opportunity to educate. Now, one of the things that was interesting to me in a post I had on one of my Facebook sites is one of my hometown buddies that I went to high school with says, well, what if this guy ends up being right? You guys are all eat crow. And it's interesting.
Even a blind squirrel gets a nut every.
Yeah, I said, well, I'll eat crow, but I said the reality is it's not crow, because even if you're playing darts in the dark with blindfolds on, you might hit the bullseye once. But the more important point is that there was so much wrong in that guy's post, from characterizing this as a blizzard to, and I have confidence that it's not going to verify what he said. But the more interesting point in that is that no matter what you or I or James or Bill or anyone says, there will be some that say if it does snow 2 or 3 inches here in Atlanta, or 4 inches even, that he was right. Even though if you look at what he said or what he wrote in that meme, he was wrong. So it's almost kind of a lose-lose situation from a communication standpoint to the public. So
Yes. Let me go on this. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but let me go on this communication thing, because I think this is, we need to go back to some foundational issues, and I would love to hear from Laura on this. And I am way off the reservation on this. I've said this on this program, and you guys think I'm nuts, but I want to hear from Laura, because I have said, Laura, in the past that we as an industry and a weather enterprise legitimized Facebook as a weather distribution platform by being there. And I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, that's a real issue, because when you look at where the public's getting their information and they're following what they consider their credible sources, they're looking at Facebook, they're looking at Twitter, they're watching the broadcast news, and they're gathering it from all those different sources. And so there's all those different opportunities to provide that education that Marshall was talking about, to clarify that communication process. And that's what I see when I review all the social media sources when an event is rolling out. And I kind of see how that information is being pushed out there. And that's part of the problem, because if some people are focusing only on one form of social media, such as Facebook, then it's kind of a scattered approach. It's not a holistic approach. And so I think that's the big problem is that we're coming at them from all different ways, all different modalities, and it's really a holistic process.
And did we legitimize it by going there?
Well, I think we had to go there. I think, the issue is that, people were getting their information from different social media sources. And so I know all kinds of official agencies, not just weather, but law enforcement, security, all different entities, felt like they had to go to Facebook because that's where people were at. And so going there and providing information there, yes, does create that problem. But what if we weren't there?
Well, do we see, that's an interesting point. Do we see, I'll use the term social meteorologist. We don't see social criminologists creating the same kind of ripple, because you mentioned, law enforcement goes there, but we have not seen the same ripple effect in other areas, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, in law enforcement, you can look at it in terms of, the gun violence and the shootings, the, police shootings and that information, and you can see a lot of information being pushed out that way. Fire departments are doing a lot in that area as well, and they're putting out information. And the problem is, I think what you're getting at is that there's not any competition in that. There's not a lot of other voices. And so the problem is right. that we've got people in social media who are not trained meteorologists, taking pieces of that information and competing in that communication process. And I think that's the big difference.
Right. And this goes to a foundational issue. And I have just picked up, I've not even gotten through the first chapter of Tim Wu's new book. Laura, have you seen this yet? The Attention Merchants?
No.
This is, oh my goodness. I couldn't even get through the introduction without just going, oh my goodness, this is required reading. It's my pick of the week. But this goes back to the foundation of newspapers and advertising in newspapers. And what won in those early stages was the sensational headlines, because a certain percentage of the population will go for those. And you're not going to change that. And this is why I feel I get so mad about us legitimizing it as a platform, as I said, and going there in the first place, because there really was no, on the weather side, not on news, but on the weather side, there was no financial reason to go there. And what we've done, and this is on the news side, we've entered ourselves into a system that 20 years ago, broadcasting would never have allowed. We're in a system here. Imagine if we had gone to the cable companies during the rise of cable, and the cable companies said to us, okay, we're going to distribute your product, but only to about 3% of our subscribers, because that's what we're getting through a Facebook page, right? We would have never accepted that. We'd never have accepted that. And we never would have accepted it if they had said, okay, we're going to run your newscasts, but you know what? We're going to run them 6 or 12 hours late, which is what happens on the news feed. We put time-sensitive weather information on this Facebook page, and the EdgeRank algorithm leaks them out to people for 3 days afterwards. It's wholly irresponsible.
Yeah, I think that's the big difference. When we're comparing to other official sources that are putting out information, it's not time-sensitive information. But with weather, it is time-sensitive. And I think that's the problem. And the public doesn't understand that side of it.
Yeah, I think the other key thing that's different from some of these other discipline or topic areas is we can't leave out emotion. I mean, people love snowstorms. They get excited about tornadoes. And so, for whatever reason, people, I think, want to go buy their bread and their milk here in the South when they hear the threat of snow. I was having a conversation with someone tonight, and I was like, why do people are all over my Facebook page asking me, is it going to snow here in Atlanta? Is it going to snow here? I was like, it's Monday. Just give me a chance to let the models play out a little bit. They're still, they're starting to converge. But as you all know, even tonight, I mean, last I saw, at least, the GFS was a bit more aggressive than the Euro, at least for our snow chances here in North Georgia. But people, as soon as that leaks out, I mean, emotion takes over, and then it's not only wish casting, but it's confirmation bias. They start listening to information that they want to believe is what's going to happen. And so I think that's a challenge too that we're going to struggle with.
Right. And the industry blew it because we didn't develop canonical sources for our stuff. We went off into these other platforms. There should have been a canonical James Spann, this is where it's at, and that's where you go if you want the truth, rather than taking time swatting down all these rumors. And as far as there's a number of people, I got to go and do this Fox show in a minute, but as far as the number of people within the enterprise that are whining about this, I'm sorry, you made this bed, and to whine about it now, that horse is way out of the barn, so you need to just knock it off.
Well, and I think that's what Brian's point was in the article. I think Rick just tweeted it out there as well. I think that was kind of his point, and to some degree, I do agree with that point.
Yeah. I gotta go get ready for my Fox show, but I'm listening. So y'all keep going.
I've got 15 additional minutes, James, so I can stay on the 10:15.
If we put in a couple extra quarters, can we have 30?
Well, my daughter's got volleyball, but I know that I've got a little extra time here. She's playing really competitive volleyball. I may end up in Alabama visiting James at a volleyball tournament here in the next 3 or 4 weeks. So
come see us, Marshall. So James, do you agree or disagree with Kevin about our going the lemmings to the sea to social media as meteorologists?
Well, it's like, what Dr. Myers said, you have to be there because that's where the world happens to be. But I think we've sold our soul. But, if the world is there, I don't think you can get everybody to agree, all right, we're not going to post any information on Facebook. The Weather Service, the private sector, nobody's a credible source will not post information on social media. Well, we're not going to agree to that. Somebody's always going to go over there. So I think it is what it is, and now we've got to fight it. And I do agree, Cal. I'll agree with you. We made this bed, and we are lying in it, man. I mean, it's brutal. It is a bad road, and it's a struggle. I sit here and pour out my heart and my soul. I don't sleep. Of course, I haven't slept since 1973, but now I'm really not sleeping. Because all day and all night, you're on the Twitter and you're on the Facebook and you're on Snapchat and you're on Instagram. You're pushing all this information out and answering all these questions. But what's so frustrating on Facebook, which is where most people are, what's the organic reach, Kevin? 3%, 2%?
Yes.
3, yeah.
How do we get to this?
Thank you. That's right. So let's not keep making this same mistake over. This is
so here's my question, Kevin. Where do we go from here? What do we do now?
We go and we build, as I said, the canonical source for our particular employers or who we are, and say, look, here it is right here. This is where you go. If you want to spend time swatting down rumors on the social media, that's fine. But you talked about educating people. There is no way that we're going to go through and cleanse and educate people about Facebook and what's on there. If they want to go and look and see that, that's fine. But people are complaining about having to swat all this stuff down and spend time answering this person and that person and the other person. You don't have to do that. You go and make the canonical source. It makes money for your employer, without which, and I'm no fan of any of the broadcast companies, as you know, but we're all here, at least in the broadcast side, we're all here because they're paying us to be here. And I understand the arguments against giving all the stuff away, but at the end of the day, if these broadcast platforms go away, there's not going to be anything left for us. A number of people have tried it. Maybe James is one guy who can go and start his own James Spann website and do this 24/7, but it has burned out a lot of people, and none of them have gotten anywhere with it.
Can I ask?
We've got to get our pocket dictionary to find out what that word canonical means. So, but go ahead, Marshall.
Yeah, can I ask? This is a question for Rick, actually, and I know he can't officially speak for his employer, but as someone that's employed by the Weather Service, I mean, I know there was some initial hesitancy to move the National Weather Service, which is an official source, into the social media realm. And I think, frankly, the Weather Service was slow. But now I actually believe the Weather Service is doing quite a nice job with some of these. And I think also the Sioux, I forget his name right now, a colleague over in Birmingham. His question is also directed at him. I think the Weather Service is doing a very good job with some of these one-page infographics that are being put out on topics. How do we get to a point where Southeast Directional State Twitter site has 40,000 followers, and the Weather Service in the same region might have 10,000? I mean, is there something, the conservative nature of the Weather Service's approach, does it kind of come back to that sensationalism that we mentioned? I'm curious what our Weather Service colleagues think about that, because that has bugged me. I always push that people should be following their local. In fact, if you're listening to this right now, tweet out there to all your followers and everybody on Facebook, go follow your National Weather Service local office, because I think that's critical. I think that is that sort of official authority there.
Kevin, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, well, yeah, I have quite a few actually.
Stupid question.
Yeah, but the question is, are any of them suitable for the show?
No.
Remember,
Only
Kevin,
you, Brian.
nobody from Southern region is listening to this. You just
Nobody.
Yeah. Sure.
He's not falling
I think
for that.
behind Norman and perhaps Fort Worth, we have the most people following us on social media. I think we're close to about 100,000 now. And I actually keep stats, or I did on our website, as how many hits we get on our website versus how many followers we have on social media. And it's 100 times over on social media versus somebody coming to our website, because our website is sort of obscure. We get confused with weather.com, or, I can't tell you how many times people ask me what station I'm on. So there's just tons of confusion about the weather enterprise just from the general public standpoint. But going back to what Dr. Shepard said at the very beginning, the distraction is the biggest problem that we have. I can walk right out there on the operations floor right now, and we spend a tremendous amount of resource and time probably arguing and combating the false narrative that's being pursued on social media or whatever, versus into the forecast and into the models like we should be. So we spend, at this point now, even where we stand, I have to assign someone out there to deal with social media, whether it be severe weather, and particularly winter weather in the Deep South is always a problem. Like I said, there's some emotional component to snow in the Deep South. It's going to make or break your winter. People get angry about snow, and it's always funny too, because they want it, and then when we get it, they don't want it anymore. So it's always a kind of a weird thing. But we spend a tremendous amount of time, too much, in fact, for the resources that we have available to us, combating a lot of those false narratives. And another interesting thing too is that, and I've always thought about this, there's no real definition of what a meteorologist is. We can all sit around and say, well, we have degrees in meteorology, that makes us a meteorologist, but there's no test, there's no MCATs, there's no bar exam. So what's to say that somebody just can't call themselves a meteorologist or a tweeterologist or whatever?
That's a show title. That's a show title right there.
Well, can I just say that there actually is an official definition of meteorology. You're right, though, in it that it's not. It is subjective in some ways. But the American Meteorological Society, the AMS, was asked several years ago to develop criteria for what a meteorologist is and who can use the term. So it is out there on the AMS website. And the reason it was developed is that we actually had some television stations and media companies come to the AMS, and they were trying to determine who could use the term versus, I think they were trying to set their rates, or, determine who they could hire and what they could call people that had the seals and who didn't have seals and who didn't have degrees. So there is an official what is a meteorologist page on the website. Now, we can quibble with it, because certainly there are people that have gone through military training and have gone through other training that are certainly solid weather forecasters and, as good as they come. But I would say that at least there is an American Meteorological Society official site, and maybe, I can find, or Rick or someone can find and dig out and tweet out there, because it does exist. But to your point, though, we don't have this credentialed thing unless you go and get a CBM or you go and get the CCM from the EMS or you go get an NWA. There are tests associated with those, but many people, including myself, I don't know if any of the panelists are CCMs. I keep being asked by several people to go get my CCM, but I've just chosen not to. I feel I have the credentials I need, frankly, to kind of do what I do, but there are some mechanisms out there.
Right. Well, I guess my point was that, from a legal standpoint, if you try to write a prescription, you can go to jail for that, or, you could be arrested. So there's no real, the AMS and NWA both, I mean, I think they're good for what they do and what they stand for, but from a legal standpoint, there's no recourse. If I go on social media and I don't have a degree or abide by the definition, I can just call myself anything I want. So most other professional organizations have some kind of test or some kind of standards that are very visible, teaching, doctors, lawyers, and if you go against that and try to falsify some of that, you can actually get in pretty serious legal trouble. So I don't know if there's any way to really do that, but I don't want to get down on that road, but the bigger thing for me is just the social media component has to be accounted for and adjusted for. We just have to do it at this point, because not only are we reaching that newer generation that we probably wouldn't reach otherwise, but I can't, and there's no way to verify this, but I can't tell you probably how many people follow things like severe weather warnings on there, and it may be their only lifeline, versus say weather radio. If 5% of people in Alabama use weather radio, how many people are using Twitter or Facebook to get their warning information? It could be life-saving information. So for us to hold that back and expect people to come seek us out, let's say on our webpage, I think it would just be irresponsible at this point on our part.
So Marshall, you called this guy out, with a lot of other meteorologists. So we're sort of policing the process. Do we come off looking bad as meteorologists by doing that, or did we do a good thing? Because this guy actually backed up a little bit from what I could tell on his Facebook page and said, look, I was just putting out some data. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I'm actually very cognizant of that, actually, Bill. I don't want to come across as someone that's sort of arrogant or slapping down someone or flashing. That's not my intent at all. That's never my approach. My approach simply in anything I write, if you read my Forbes articles or even watch Weather Geeks, my real goal is always weather or climate literacy. And so it's important to sort of, and if you read what I said in the Forbes article, there's a very specific section where I said we should not be ridiculing someone that has a legitimate love and enthusiasm for this discipline. As I was interested in this since sixth grade. I've been doing weather since sixth grade. And heck, if we had some of the formats that we had at that time, I probably would have been out there putting out weather forecasts. That's what I was doing then. I was telling my aunt. I wasn't telling 100,000 followers, but that's probably what I would have been doing. So, I'm very cognizant of the fact that there are people listening to us right now, or people that I'm interacting with on Twitter that are saying, well, hey, Dr. Shepard, just because that guy put that out there, don't lump all of us weather enthusiasts out there into the same category, because some of us are very responsible. So I do agree with that. I think it's about tone. I think that we, and this is just in life in general. I mean, if you have a disagreement with someone, or if you have something that you want to kind of clarify, the way you approach it and the tone is important. So that's what I'm cognizant of. So yeah, I was terse in my writing of that because it was a very dangerous, irresponsible thing to do. But I also had some sort of middle ground language in there too, because I understand that this guy just loved the weather and thought he might have been doing the right thing. Now that we all know that there are some people out there that aren't trying to hear any of this, and they just feel that they're right and they're going to put out what they want, and they don't care what me or Rick or anyone else thinks. But I think it's important how we approach it. But I think we do have to call it out when we see it, but in a way that provides education about it, not just to be swatting down every gnat or fly that's out there.
And Marshall, to go back real quick to your question from, excuse me, a few minutes ago, I think there is some appeal, and Nate and Susan Jasko did a presentation last summer at the AMS Broadcasters Conference in Raleigh. And I don't know if, Kevin, you were there, but I don't know if you heard this particular talk, but how there's some appeal to non-meteorologists, or to people that aren't in the government or aren't on TV. There's some appeal. We've got a big Facebook following for one particular individual here in our area. He's a meteorologist, but he's not affiliated with any TV station. And the feeling among people is he's telling it like it is. He's not limited by the being with the government or being at a TV station. He can say the truth and he can give them the real scoop on what's going to happen, whereas we have to be more reserved. There's an appeal to that. And I think some people gravitate toward that, and that's what they want. They think they're getting the real story from someone else who's not an official source.
Yeah, I do remember that talk, and it was definitely a good one too. But I think about going back is now weather information's model data, let's say, is just readily available anywhere. Anybody can go get it, repost it, and somehow that sort of becomes the truth. There's no real forecasting involved anymore. It's just like the snow maps from the GFS. Anybody can go out there and grab those. It's not proprietary, and you can just repost till you're blue in the face, and you can you can sort of skim around it too and say, well, I didn't say this, but the GFS was that forecast. It's not my forecast or whatever. So a lot of people get away with that too. But back in the day, you didn't have access to all that. Now you just have access to pay a couple dollars and you get access to pretty much anything you want. So
do you rue the day that all that data became free? Because I can remember a day when we had to all pay for it, Kevin.
Well, it's kind of, I was referring to our European friends, but the GFS certainly has been free as long as I can remember, and all the American models always have been. So even the Canadian as well. So, but there's so many, even on that front, there's so many sources of model information now. Just think about the conglomerate of models that we've had to go to an ensemble approach, and even that information is available too. So there's really nothing to stop anyone from just going out and reposting all of these over and over again. So,
yeah. And let me say that, I think any good cake maker should know something about the ingredients in the cake. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is there are a lot of people that put a lot of model information out there that have no idea about the model itself and the equations and the thing. And I'm not saying you need to go out and learn the omega equation, but I think your point about there being so many different nuances of the models and their initial conditions and the various parameterizations that are in the model, and the fact that one type of model may handle a certain situation better than the other. It is why, and I might be stepping up on a soapbox here, because it is why I kind of get annoyed with the whole Euro GFS discussion sometimes. Yes, the European model is better statistically. The data shows that it does a little better, but I get really annoyed with that debate sometimes because we're talking, minor differences in the grand scheme of things. Yeah, they both miss in certain situations, but if you look at those height anomaly correlations or those anomaly maps that we use to assess skill, some people will frame the GFS as if it's a sort of third-class citizen. It's a world-class model. And the other key point there is the European model itself is assimilating a lot of satellite data coming from us. And so, but I guarantee you, if you ask a good majority of the people that send out a European model forecast for this snowstorm, they probably can't explain four-dimensional data assimilation or Kalman filters, the things that are in that process. And so that's why it's important for all of us to, including myself, to educate on these things, and people will maybe understand those nuances before they just hit the share button.
Well, you're absolutely right. And the one thing I teach our folks almost from day one is what separates us, and everybody's been through this, but what separates us from just being a model interpreter or an amateur weathercaster? Why are we here? Why are we getting paid? What is our role in this process? What's the forecaster's role in the process of making a forecast? And if you're just going to go out here and spit out what the model says or do some kind of conglomerate of all the models put together, I don't really need you anymore. So I need somebody who understands the atmosphere in a way that an amateur person doesn't, or the models don't understand. So we have to take what we know and apply it to real life situations. Let's talk about yesterday's severe threat that we had. There was a big disagreement between us and some of our partners, even in the government and the NOAA NWS industry as well. And because I feel like our forecasters here were taking their knowledge of the atmosphere and applying it the way they understood it, and not just going with a model output. You know, one thing that I've noticed in a trend, especially over the last probably 2 years, is that it's getting to be where the models are making this false radar, this reflectivity product. And I don't really agree with that product because, like you said, it has to obey certain equations that are mathematical and may not necessarily represent the atmosphere. So if you keep going down this road of applying the reflectivity, snow depth is another one that's just a formula within the models. If you go down these roads of applying snow depth or this false radar reflectivity product from, let's say, the NAM 4 kilometer, you're going to fail more than you succeed. So you have to apply your knowledge of the atmosphere. And I think a lot of forecasters have started to go down this road, and it's a dead end so far. Now, it may get to where the models are better and get better at those things, but it's a dead end so far because you're losing the ability to adapt what you know about the atmosphere to your forecast. And that is what makes us the professional meteorologists versus an amateur.
Now, a lot of people yesterday were, unhappy that the SPC was saying one thing and the Weather Service in Birmingham was saying something different. And it turned out that you guys were basically right, Kevin. So talk about that. How can you be so different from the SPC? And is there some discussion about that?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's a couple different roles. I mean, SPC looks at things from a national perspective. We, our local job here is to take, again, our knowledge of what we think is going to happen here locally and apply it here in a more mesoscale fashion, say, versus a synoptic fashion. And there's always going to be disagreement. I mean, every meteorologist is going to have a disagreement. But the thing I try to tell our folks is we want to try to collaborate as much as we can with SPC. We try to do that. I know the system needs a lot of work. It's broken in a lot of places. I understand that as well, and we can talk about some of that. But our guys here, we have a responsibility to Central Alabama and the people that we serve. And I tell our people, you serve our customers and our people. The state EMA is a main customer, obviously our media partners, and just the 3.5 million people that we serve. And our responsibility is to them. And sometimes we have to break consistency. In fact, I talked to some of our forecasters about it, and they felt a little bit of pressure this time around and to try to coordinate and collaborate. So I think it actually hurt our forecast process because they were distracted by that of trying to come and be consistent instead of focusing in on the task at hand, which is, alerting our people because, and Dr. Myers and I have talked about this, but the warning process doesn't really start in the 15 minutes before the supercell hits your house. The warning process starts in the days leading up to it. You have to know this is coming, and you can't rely on the last 15 minutes and wall-to-wall coverage to protect yourself. You have to, the warning process starts days in advance. So we have to recognize that as well. I know the process is broken. I know there's some things that need to improve on that front as far as all of us getting on the same page, not only the people within the National Weather Service, but the media partners as well when it comes to snow and messaging and what to do as far as protecting yourself. But what I try to remember and what I teach is that the official National Weather Service forecast comes from the local offices. The official Weather Service forecast comes from these local offices. You can only get the official forecast from the National Weather Service from the local offices. You can't get it from a national center, WPC or SPC, or even a hurricane. Once it comes inland, it becomes a local office problem, and that's the place to get the official forecast and not any other centers.
Hey, before Marshall go, Marshall, you got to go.
Yeah, I've got 2 minutes.
Okay. Well, first off, hang on here. Before I got to talking about fake news. We're going to backtrack a little bit here. I have a nomination for the fake news story of the year. Are you guys ready for this? All right. I want you to listen real carefully.
Tonight, fighting words. Donald Trump says Ted Cruz stole Iowa, accusing him of voter fraud. Cruz now hitting back without warning. Tornadoes tear across the South, dozens of homes destroyed, and a church torn apart as people inside prayed for their lives.
That's my fake story of the year right there. That's my fake news from NBC. There was an Kevin Laws. This was the Pickens County tornado, okay? Remember the story that these people heard the warning issued by your office. They got into a community tornado shelter, and 50 people could have been killed there. That's basically all that lived there. It was an amazing example of how the warning process should work. And these boneheads came on here and said there was no warning. That is fake news. So, Marshall, I'm sorry, that was my fake news story.
No, I agree. And, I've also spoken out on that. I mean, the reality is some of this is not just, a lot of this actually is very much big media, professional meteorologists too. There's enough sort of problematic blame to go around on this. I do have to step out now to go get my daughter, but I want to thank you all for having me on the show. I'm always around and kind of pop in when I can. Continue to support us. Thank you all for those that are supporting the Weather Geeks. We kick off our 4th season, believe it or not, 100th episode, new episode on Sunday. We've got the oceanographer and meteorologist for the Navy, Rear Admiral Tim Gallaudet. And then James, just to mention to you, we start a 2-part series with Ginger Z, Jen Carfagno, and Janice Huff next Sunday and the Sunday afterwards on women in meteorology. And Ginger says hello, and she gives you a lot of props on the show. And we've taped that show, so I know that there's a WeatherBrains mention on one of those shows as well. So thank you all for having me, and keep doing what you're doing.
Marshall, you're the best, man. Thanks a lot for taking the time to join us tonight. Thanks a lot. It's always good to have you.
Ladies, take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
But goodness, we could talk all night on this subject. I got so many things to say, and I want to talk about people can't find their place on a map. I want to talk about how we communicate. That's the main part, I think, the reason Kevin and Laura are here. But back to this SPC Birmingham thing, Kevin. And here's my problem: it's a distraction for us. A lot of times they don't come to you; they come to me. I want to know how come this map is radically different from that map. In the case of this week, Tuscaloosa was in an enhanced risk, and BMX had no risk, not marginal, not slight. It was enhanced, and then BMX went to nothing, and Birmingham was in no risk. And I probably spent, this is not an exaggeration, 2 hours answering questions about that. And like I say, this is 2 hours I don't have. But I can clearly see that there's communication issues and there's confusion. And Dr. Myers, is that a problem, or is it just me because all these people are coming to me wanting to know why the maps are different?
No, it is a problem. People are out there looking at those different sources of information. They're seeing those differences, and they want that clarification. And they're going to come to you because you're one of their credible sources. And so they're going to go ask you, what does that mean? And that's what I think the broadcast Mets do. They spend a lot of time educating and explaining and trying to explain what those differences mean.
And so I guess the question is, can we ever, is there any hope for coming up with a simplified, unified message across the weather enterprise? We sure can't do it in television. On the broadcast side, it's a bigger debacle on my side. But the Weather Service can't do it, and we can't do it. Is there any hope? And I say that there is. And I was very encouraged today, had a little collaboration chat here between the Weather Service and broadcast involving a winter weather event in this market coming up in a few days. That's fantastic. That's what needs to happen more. And it's just all a matter of communication. And looking back on that thing, Kevin, I understand your frustration, and it's not about who's right and who's wrong. Is, Kevin Laws better than Rich Thompson and John Hart? Or that's a bad game with no right answer there. And we have to be careful too, because I think a lot of times we think, well, I know better than anybody else. And if we all have that attitude, we have different products. But Kevin, is there a way in the future to maybe have a better collaboration with SPC and the local offices, not just on watches, but on outlooks?
Yeah, I think so. There's going to be old school culture. Okay, let's just talk about it. And
remember,
for years and years,
nobody Southern regions listening here. Nobody headquarters. Right. We're just talking between us.
Right. I'm gonna hand this off to Rick here in a second, but it's just for years and years, SPC was sort of behind the scenes, and now that they're out in the open, there's no putting that cat back in the horse back in the barn there. So we're gonna have to deal with that. But in a way, the SPC, if you want to know how the process works, let's say we start with the overnight period, they sort of dictate what's going to happen. Let's just talk about the most recent thing. I'll just give you the facts of the case, and you tell me what we should do. So on day 3, most of the market here was in the a marginal risk. Okay, so they only update day 3 once a day. So no matter how much information or new information comes in, that's typically their rule. I think once or twice in the history of the SPC, they've updated day 3 twice. So they have their rules that they go by. Fair enough. So the day 2 comes out, and they not only upgrade the risk, but they upgrade it by 2 categories. Now, how are we supposed to know they're going to do that? We don't have a good process and a good way of knowing what their thoughts are before everybody knows it.
But let me ask you this, let me interrupt it. So they don't communicate with you at all like they do before issuing a watch. There's no communication with the local offices with outlooks.
Well, and that's a good point. I think that's something that we need to look at, and something I think we can do is that, because what the watch is, and I saw, it's awful. It's confusing sometimes as to who issues the watches. Okay, SPC coordinates the watches between offices because it usually crosses CWA boundaries or state boundaries or whatever. Typically it does. And so, but the local offices still have direct control over what happens there. Now, SPC can make some suggestions, but they always conference in everybody, all offices, give everybody a chance to talk. And, hey, we want this county in, we don't want this county in yet, or whatever. So there's a lot of collaboration that happens with the watches. And the local offices, again, have that final say over what happens there. Because, again, the local offices is the official NWS forecast. So we have direct control over that. And I think a similar process should start to happen with these outlooks. It would be nothing, I don't think, for them. It may take some time, but to gin up a conference call, just like you would with the watches, with all the offices and get input. Because you have one person at SPC who is making the entire nationwide forecast. Why wouldn't you want input from the offices that in those areas to see if there's something you overlooked, or maybe we had some different thoughts? So more heads usually prevail, and make a collaborative forecast is always better than an individual forecast. I think we would all agree with that. So to me, that process there, I think like you said, it needs some work. So if they decide, in this case, they decide to put an enhanced risk and jump it up 2 categories in one forecast, we get it at the same time everybody else gets it. So if our forecasters vehemently disagree, but at the same time I'm telling them, hey, your responsibility is to our customers here in Central Alabama. I expect you to make a forecast for our customers. It's not going to be collaborated a lot of the time, and I think that's what needs to be fixed there.
Kevin, this is Kevin in Wichita Falls. You said something a few minutes ago that I wanted to touch on, if I could, about the frequency. And Rick and I talked about this a little bit in the context of our new IWT meetings here. The frequency with which not only you guys, but SPC puts out information. We're in a totally different world from, the 6 o'clock news, and then you wait until the 10 o'clock news. I don't know if Terry Heaton coined this or whatnot. Somebody he pays attention to calls it the river of news, right? And it's this river of information. And it feels to me like we would all benefit if we would catch up. Not we broadcasters, we're already doing this, but if the Weather Service and SPC would catch up on a more frequent update, because we're all sitting around waiting 6, 8 hours, 10 hours, whatever it is, for this next thing to come by. And that's just not the way the world is anymore. And I'd love to hear Kevin and Laura on that.
Sure. Well, in yesterday's event, I was the mesoscale forecaster, and I probably updated our forecast 6 times for the 9 hours that I was here yesterday. So I have that luxury, and I don't really understand. I need to really go out and visit Rick and SPC to really kind of get my arms wrapped around what the process there is, as far as why they stick to the old culture and only do a few updates per day, when I have the luxury as a mesoscale forecaster to change it within 5 minutes if I need to. But I look at the newest data, I follow the radar data, and I make informed decisions about what's going to happen over the next several hours right there on the spot. And I don't know, James, I don't know if you or Bill were following yesterday's event, but I must have issued probably 3 or 4 mesoscale discussions yesterday and updated our forecast during the process of the day, and I have that luxury to do that. And I'm not really sure, maybe Rick knows a little better than I do as far as what SPC's guidelines there and why they're only allowed to do so many updates per cycle.
Well, I don't know a whole lot more than you do, but I do know that they are really rooted in the culture of the 50s and 60s still. I mean, they're a tremendous asset and a huge pool of knowledge and expertise over there. And I wouldn't want to spend an hour in their shoes over there doing what they do. I have the highest respect and admiration for them, but I do agree with you that we need to move forward. And I don't know how you do it or how easy it is to do it, but they are going to start issuing the day 3 twice a day here pretty soon. But we got into a jam, and this happens every year. Kevin and I talked about this, I think, but we got into a jam where the weather event is evolving outside of their fixed product update times. And we went through a debate internally in the office. Do we sit and wait until 1630Z for them to issue the new Outlook when we have this new information that we really need to change now? So we updated our Outlook before they did, and people got mad and said, well, you don't agree with their Outlook. And well, would you rather be correct, or would you rather be in line with these these antiquated, in my opinion, time updates, scheduled updates that the SPC is constricted by? So I think I agree with everything you said. I think there needs to be more collaboration on the outlooks, just like we do the watches. Why can't they draw up an outlook and share it on our internal communication system, just like we do with a watch, and say, hey, here's what we're thinking about. We have the luxury of walking through the break room and going over there and looking over their shoulder. You and 121 other offices don't have that. So I think there are things we could do to improve some of this collaboration, but it is still going to come down, like Kevin said, to it is the local office's responsibility to take care of their counties, our counties. I consider the SPC Outlook's guidance information. We almost always stick pretty close to that, but we do break away from it from time to time, always after collaborating with them. So I just don't know if we'll ever get to the point where everything, well, I think there's a way to get to the point where everything from the Weather Service all looks exactly the same. I don't think any of us want to go there, though.
Laura, it sounds like there's an inertia problem, but isn't this frequency issue something that can help that?
Yeah, it's a big problem. We did a service assessment on the Texas-Oklahoma floods about 1.5 years ago. And, that was a month-long event, and one of the things that we analyzed was when that information was coming out. So the SPC information, the River Forecast Center information, and it was all coming out at different timing intervals. And that information was being briefed to different agencies and organizations in the process, and they started talking about the inconsistency. And so one of the recommendations we made in the service assessment was we need to get that timing tighter because of the problems that it creates. And sometimes you really can't see how difficult that is until you have a long range event like that and you see all the inconsistencies that have been created by it. And when we went back and said, why don't we adjust those timings, it got back to what Rick was talking about. It's cultural. There's, a lot of, dynamics in those different agencies about when they produce and what they produce and the timing of their products. And so there needs to be some type of coordination. And, that's something I know that the service assessments have recommended, and I know there's attempts to work on it.
I'll tell you guys, hello. I'm hearing myself on somebody's channel. You guys hear that echo?
Yeah, it's terrible, yes.
Laura, I think it's coming down your channel for some reason. Now it's gone. I was going to say that thing on Monday, yesterday, it's just an example of how we need to figure this out. And I'm not saying anybody's right, anybody's wrong. I mean, pointing fingers doesn't do any good here. We've all got an issue here, all of us, everybody on this panel. But goodness, I was dealing with the guys in Birmingham and Tuscaloosa. Like, this map shows nothing, and this map shows we're in this risk. And then you had the Cullman County problem in my market, where they're in a different CWA, and they had different colors, and they were under a risk, and the county to the left and the right wasn't under a risk. It was one of these FUBAR days where I'm thinking, I just wanted to throw up my hands and say, that's the day my head is going to blow up. But I think we can all do better. But what we got to do, and I want to talk about this communicating weather information using maps and narratives. Kevin and Laura have got some very fascinating information that's very important for the weather enterprise. So I don't want anybody to go away. And if you're listening, just, if you got to get out of the car, that's fine. But be sure and listen to the end of the show. But quickly, I got to take a break. We're going to listen to Professor Peters and WeatherBrains 101. We got Tony Rice. We'll come back and do some email with Aubrey, and then we'll get right back to Kevin and Laura as WeatherBrains rolls along.
WeatherBrains 101 with Professor Peters.
This is my second follow-up report on the NetAtmo weather station. The initial review was conducted in episode 465, and I did a follow-up to that in episode 512. So this is a follow-up to the initial review. The NetAtmo weather station, comprised of the indoor and outdoor module, has been in operation at my location since December of 2014. I have to give the outdoor module high marks for its ability to weather the weather. That is to say, it is made of durable materials and has not throughout the year. I will say, though, that the outdoor module was situated to keep it out of direct sunlight, but the exterior metal as well as the plastic interior have done well. I know this because I had occasion to change the 2 AAA batteries on the outdoor module for the first time. So my initial skepticism on those batteries powering the unit for a year has been completely wiped out since the batteries actually lasted over 2 years. As with any battery-powered equipment, I'm sure your mileage may vary. And I have even better news. NetAtmo now offers a full complement of weather measuring devices with the addition of the rain gauge and a wind sensor measuring direction and speed. Purchasing all the elements at one time will get you a discount too. The whole station now runs $308 with free shipping. I have both of these additional elements, but my location on a heavily wooded lot has kept me from getting them all sited properly yet. Since the average run-of-the-mill weather enthusiast is going to want to have a full station, I would really encourage the NetAtmo folks to consider an option to get all the elements in one package, perhaps with some discount, say $2.99 for the whole enchilada, along with free shipping, of course. Besides the durability of the equipment, everything is very easy to set up, so you'll be measuring weather elements in no time. There is no doubt from my experience with this equipment that it would make an excellent weather station for any weather enthusiast. If you have a weather question, you can drop a line to question@weatherbrains.com.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your astronomy outlook.
The quadrantid meteor shower is active now through January 10th. It's created by a very thin stream left behind by asteroid 2003 EH1. Now that thin debris trail makes for a very short peak in the meteor shower, only about 12 hours total. This year, that peak centers on 9 a.m. Eastern or 6 a.m. Pacific time, January 3rd, or this morning. So sorry you missed it. But looking at the National Weather Service sky cover forecast, South Florida, Texas, Central California, and oddly enough, the Pacific Northwest were probably the only areas that were able to see the show. That being said, you still may be able to see a few of these particularly bright meteors throughout the rest of the week. Right before sunrise is generally the best. Elsewhere in the sky, Earth is at perihelion, or the closest point, about 3 million miles closer than in July, in its 19 mile per second orbit around the sun. Now, this happens at 14:18 Zulu, or 9:18 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific. The word perihelion comes from the Greek roots, peri meaning near, and helios meaning sun. Now, this may not make much sense. Yes, it is winter, and yes, the Earth is at its closest point to the sun. And it is at its farthest point from the sun in July, called aphelion. But of course, seasons come not from Earth's proximity to the sun, but from the tilt of the axis, which is also why seasons are exactly opposite in northern and southern hemispheres. Happy 2017. We're just 7 months and 18 days away from the Great American Total Eclipse. That's your Astronomy Outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
When the weather ball is red, warmer weather is ahead. When the weather ball is white, Colder weather is in sight. When the weather ball is green, no change in the weather is foreseen. When colors blink by night or day, precipitation's on the way.
This is the National Weather Roundup for January 3rd, 2017. Hey, Kevin's going to snow in Alabama this weekend.
Yes, why not? Let's make everybody's winner right here.
You heard it first on this show. The Sioux says it's going to snow in Alabama. Aubrey. She's got her mute on. I know that this, Aubrey's made a great point. I used to love snow forecasting and winter storms, and now you hate it. Aubrey, you know what I mean?
No, I know exactly what you mean. And I'm sorry, my iPad was losing power, so I had to charge it. And so I'm kind of stuck in a weird position. But no, I mean, I'm from Connecticut. I'm from the land of snow and winter, and I never minded it. And it was fun, and it was interesting. It was challenging. And now it literally sucks the life out of me.
That is the truth.
I don't enjoy it. And it's really sad because, and it's not the answering questions. It's sad that there's so much misinformation out there. And I don't think a lot of people realize that they are being just misinformed, whether intentionally or unintentionally.
Yeah. And for me, it's so we have potential for a little bit of snow here Friday or Friday night. And that's 3-4 days out. Starting yesterday, the minute the severe weather is over, that's all I do around the clock. I'm trying to answer questions. And some of the questions are very serious, like my child has an appointment at the Children's Hospital on Friday. Can I drive there? That's a very legitimate, important question. I do my best to answer all of them. And then you get hundreds of, is going to snow in Cullman, is going to snow in Jasper, is going to snow in Eastaboga, is going to, all this is going to snow in my backyard. And, if I can find it, I just typically do a blog link to that. And then you got the bogus forecast you have to put down, and then you're dealing with stuff every minute of every day, and it does suck the life out of you. I agree, Aubrey, and that's sad because when coming up as a kid and as a young guy, it wasn't like this, and I guess we just have to get used to it or train our bodies to handle it. But it's just brutal. These weeks are brutal. So the question is, Aubrey,
have you figured out why people get so angry about it? That's what I want to know.
Yeah. Oh, you most of these people, you couldn't drive a 10-penny nail up their backside with a sledgehammer. And then they start hating on you. And you with the haters and trolls and know-it-alls. And it's like the first comment this morning, I put up, a graphic this morning early, and the first guy just lit into me like flies on poop. And I mean, it was ugly talk. And I'm thinking, what's the matter with this guy?
Ask Laura. Why do they get so angry at us, Laura?
They get angry because they don't want to have to change what they were planning to do. And so that's why they don't like this kind of information. It's like people wanting to plan several days in advance. They don't want to have to change what their plans were, or they want to be more prepared for those plans. And so when we can't give them a very good answer because we're not certain enough yet, then they get angry with that process, or if we mess it up.
That's fantastic. I love hearing that.
But they get mad when bad things don't happen. That's what I don't understand. You promised us there was going to be tornadoes. You promised us baseball-size hail and an ice storm with no power for weeks. Doggone it, it didn't happen. I'm mad at you. I don't get that.
Yeah,
because it didn't hit their house. They would have felt differently if it had hit their house.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah, well, that gets down to the fact that, like Marshall was talking about earlier, people like winter weather. They want snow. They want these things to happen. Yeah. They want to be out of work. They want to be out of school. They want to go out and have fun in it. So when we put that in the forecast and it doesn't happen, then they're disappointed. So you've got this full spectrum of people, those who are disappointed, those who don't want to change their behavior, people who want to get along with their life and not have to adjust. So you have all different types of reactions.
I want there to be a Department of Broadcast Media Idiocy, and Laura is going to be in charge of it, and she's going to hold sway. She's going to hold sway over everyone in the country and say, "Stop being an idiot," and tell these people, rather than these consultants who are coming in and trying to tell us. You heard the latest wave, James? Have you heard this yet? There are some markets now where the 10 o'clock news, the weather is being cut to a minute to a minute and a half. And one of the things that they're mandating is no current conditions. It's all impact-based stuff for a 60-second weathercast at 10 o'clock.
But don't they know that weather drives the newscast?
No, not anymore, according to these knuckleheads.
It's going to change back in a month, you know.
That's right.
So,
Okay, so maybe I'm going to tweet Donald Trump, need Department of Broadcast
we've had so many show titles over the last hour and a half here.
This is a cabinet level position, and Laura Myers is going to run it.
Love it, love it.
I dare you, Kevin, because it'll probably happen.
Back to the original
Make
point. So
America
here's the
great.
deal. So we've been dealing with haters and trolls and know-it-alls, answering 10 million questions. You know, your body is just, there's nothing left when the actual event gets here. And unlike Kevin down there at the Weather Service, he's got a staff of 300. You know, we got a staff of 3. We got a staff of 3. I mean, I got 3 people here. 4. What is it, Brian? I guess there's 4 of us.
I guess you'd call it 3.5 since I'm only part-time.
And then if you bring in Bill Murray and Ryan and Scott and these other guys, we've probably got 6 or 7, okay? But it's like we are so exhausted when the actual event gets here, there's nothing left. We are just this puddle of nothing, of mush. My brain is just want to shut down. I'm fatigued. I can't hold my eyes open. And you've got to work this event, whatever it is, whether it's severe weather or snow or something. And it's just like the life has been sucked out of you by the time it starts. And Aubrey, you understand, you verbalize this better than anybody else, but I agree with you 100%.
Go ahead.
I just had some routine testing done, and they said that my stress level,
Her stress level is so high, her iPad died. But go ahead, Kevin.
Oh, she's back.
Sort of.
Now she's sort of gone.
breathe during these events. I'm trying acupuncture. I think this is a way of literally, I've got to calm down. Even though my head is about to explode, I've got to deep breathe and calm down, because throwing things apparently isn't healthy anymore.
But Laura, yeah, another show title. Throwing things isn't helping. But Laura, this stress level problem, we've got, and maybe it's just me, and maybe Aubrey and I are the only two that have this problem.
And where is 92% of this stress coming from? The social media channels.
Yes. Yes.
The fact that they can communicate with you.
Right. It has become two-way. Back in the old days, I don't even know where my phone is. Back in the old days, I had a telephone. I assume I have one here. I don't know what my number is. I've not answered my phone at work since 1998, and this is an honest-to-God story. I don't know how to get voicemail. I don't know. I don't fool with it. But that's all we had was a telephone. And now it's this constant barrage coming in through email, Weather Service chat sessions, Skywatcher chat sessions, Snapchat, Instagram, Google Plus, Facebook, Twitter.
But Laura brings up the point that they can get to you now, and this is where they're getting to you. Once again, go back, create a canonical source within your organization. Have your Sinclair friends call me. I'll fix this for them. But then you
show title.
You run it as a team. Okay, you are running it as you. Now, yes, there are people in the background in yours or people helping you in yours, but we went off in this personal branding direction, and it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable for one guy or one gal to run 24/7.
All right, so let me ask you this. So why don't you pull all your Facebook stuff and Twitter? But just you start it, and let's see if anybody follows.
No, because I don't have the influence level, and quite frankly, I don't do that. I don't put.
Well, you're kind of a big deal, man. You're Kevin Selly. Come on.
I took down. I had a station Facebook page. I took it down, and I continue with my personal profile. And I've been thinking very seriously about either blowing that up and starting again, or going back and filtering, because you hit this 5,000 cap, right? But I don't know, 4,500 of these people, I don't know. I'm very grateful that they want to come in and be my friend, but I don't push any weather information, almost no weather information on my personal profile. Twitter's a little different because it's not as badly filtered as Facebook, but I'm moving in that direction. I have moved in that direction.
So what you do, you pull all these social media accounts and you got your information on a proprietary app or.
Well, that's the thing. We don't yet, is they haven't come up with it. Now you've got like I said, call your Sinclair people, tell them to call me.
Well, I'm going to some corporate deal in 2 weeks in Tampa. All right. So I am gonna be there, and it's a corporate deal, and we're gonna talk about this issue.
I'll make you a deal. If you get me an invitation, I'll pay my way there.
Wow. Wow.
I'm serious. This is the accelerant coming back, but I am fed up with this. I've been fed up with this for a long time, as you know, but it's reaching this pinnacle of exhaustion. It's reaching a pinnacle of frustration. And in many cases, and you bring this up yourself, and Marshall does too, it's reaching a point of, and maybe a too strong a word, it's reaching a point of danger because people are being misinformed.
Right. And it's going to kill somebody. I mean, Aubrey's got health issues. I can tell you that this is not good for me. Something bad's going to happen on the back end of my life. And I'm not a stressed guy, but my problem is just time management. I mean, it's just like I've got right now, I got 5 screens in front of me, 5 screens, and they've all got issues waiting on me.
Don't sell yourself short, James. You have stress issues, whether you know it or not.
And I'm working out, and I've adjusted my diet, and I feel better, but I'm not sleeping. You don't sleep if you do this right. You don't sleep, and I know that there's some health issues that are going to happen, and we're all going to have this problem. And there's got to be some type of resolution. We're not robots. We can't operate in a 24/7 world, which we are in now, and nobody knows what to do with it. And the problems we're talking about, it's an industry-wide problem. And if you work for the Weather Service or in broadcast, it's pretty much the same way. I don't think there's an 8-hour shift anymore. Or maybe if you work for the Weather Service, Kevin, there is. But again,
you said it. You said it, James. There's no 8 hours. The thing is, weather never stops, and we have to learn that there's got. I'm talking to you, James. There's got to be a point where you've got to step back and personal time, and it can't just be once a year between Christmas and New Year's, and it's a balance. We've got to have that personal time, that personal space. Even though weather continues, we have to shut our and learn that we've got to take a break. Weather doesn't stop.
Okay, I'm on AmericanAirlines.com. I'm looking 2 weeks out. I'll go from Wichita Falls. Where are you going? Tampa.
Tampa Bay, yeah.
Tampa Bay.
It's actually St. Petersburg, across the bay.
$470. I'm willing to pay that, and I'm there. You tell me the dates. $470. I'm ready to go.
Wow. I'll talk with these guys. All right. So, I'm the lead story because of this weather, but I really want to talk about this map issue. And Kevin Laws and Laura Myers have opened my eyes to a problem. And I'll lay out the problem, and I want you guys to get into it. And the show's going to run long, but I don't care. This is important stuff. This is a podcast. You can take 3 weeks to listen to this. So the way we've always communicated risk leading up to an event, in the days before an event, we use maps. And what I've never understood, I will pour my heart and soul into a map graphic or a narrative. And what's the first 17 comments on Facebook?
Is it going to happen here?
What about Jasper? What about Coleman? What about East Bogan? What about Southside? What about me? What about? So I'm thinking, what is this? I mean, I just said that on this. Anybody can look at that map and figure this out, or anybody can read what I just wrote and figure this out. Like literally, it will say, we do not expect any snow in Winston County. First question, what about Winston County? So I've been baffled by this, but I've just not stopped to think about it. And that's part of the problem, Kevin. I ain't got time to think. I mean, I don't have time to sit down some days and gather my thoughts. And that in itself is dangerous when you're in a business that requires analytical thinking, which is what this is. But I think Laura and Kevin have figured it out. And this is what's kind of cool. So on that note, I've got to go to Studio A, Bill Murray. So the floor belongs to you. You're now the official host in charge.
Well, I think there's a large percentage, Laura. I want to hear what you have to say about that. But there's a large percentage of people that just want to touch James Spann and just want to talk to him.
Please.
Yes, that's right.
Get some
They
cooties.
want to see you respond to them. There's a certain thrill in having you retweet a sunset picture.
That's right. That's right. He makes them famous. He gives them their 15 minutes of fame, and that's what everybody wants.
So
he
Laura,
retweets them, and they get this huge number of engagement thing, and that's it. It's 15 minutes of fame.
That's exactly right, Kevin. So, Laura, tell us the scientific reason. That's my personal opinion. I mean, we all get some joy out of Spann retweeting something we send. It's a goal of all weather nerds.
Right. Well, it comes down to, people are busy with their lives and this information comes out. And the question is, do they really understand where they are on the maps that are being provided? And a lot of people do, but a lot of people don't. And what we have found in the research that we've done, several studies after several events, is that people keep telling us the same thing, that they can't find their location on some of these maps. And so we've been trying to figure out, well, what is that about? Is it because they just want that personal connection? They want somebody to tell them, is it going to happen in my place without them having to decipher the maps? Or is there a problem with understanding the maps? And it turns out that a lot of it is understanding the maps, because our maps are generally just blank county maps. They don't have the cities on them. They don't have the roadways on them. It's just the blank county maps. And so they've got to know what county they're in, and they've got to know what boundaries form their particular county. And again, those graphics aren't up there for a very long period of time. So they don't have a lot of time to figure out where they are on that map. And so that's what we're analyzing right now. We're trying to analyze how well people understand where they are and what we need to add to those maps. Because if you give them some, landmarks like cities and towns, or if you add the roadways back in, or if you put features like lakes and certain things that they're aware of, they can pinpoint themselves better. So that's what we're going to do.
And this is what James has been so masterful at for his entire career. And I was his first intern back in the day. And I remember watching this. He does so many speeches and he knows every little road. He doesn't say county road, this, that, or the other thing. He says the Home Depot at X. Right. But that doesn't scale to this broadcast model. I think that we are moving to the post. We're at the beginning of the post broadcast environment or post-broadcast world on this, because the technology is going to enable, like it does now, I pull up radar scope and I can hit that little thing that shows me exactly where I am. We're moving past this, I think.
Well, and that's also part of the reason for the problem. We have a generation that's growing up that is totally GPS oriented.
Right.
They let the technology tell them where they're at.
Right.
And so that's a big piece of this. I mean, back in the old days, I think I saw, Bill, you were pulling up an atlas there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello, 6th grade.
Yeah. We used to understand where we were because we used those atlases. That's the way we got around. And this new generation, they're using all these apps and technologies that tells them where they're at. They've never had to learn to use a map. They've never studied a map. They don't use those sort of things. And they're not directionally capable because they've let the technology do it. What happens when we don't have that technology? What happens when that technology is down during a severe weather event and they can't pinpoint where they are?
Well, you've got to at least learn where Charlotte is on the corner of South Carolina and North Carolina if you live in Charlotte. So you can look at a map on the Weather Channel and see what they're talking about. It's kind of beyond me that people don't take the time to at least learn that. Even in a big county like Jefferson in Alabama, where we are in Birmingham, we're on the very far south end of the county, literally almost in Shelby County. And there's a lot of times a big difference in the weather that happens here versus what happens in the northern part of the county. We'll see that happen this week for sure.
Yeah.
Bill, I think you're starting to static pretty bad just for your.
Sorry. Okay. Thank you.
I didn't mean to.
I gotta go.
I guess there's.
Guys, sorry to interrupt, but we've got show.
Bye, Aubrey.
Good information.
I didn't mean to derail Bill there. He'll probably reset and come back, I guess. I just think, I don't think, Lauren, maybe you can talk to this, but I don't think that I don't think we're following the lead of the evolution. The evolution is digital, and there's still so much reliance on the old business model, at least on the broadcast side, because it makes so much money and it's not being converted into digital for a number of reasons. Is that fair?
Yeah, and there's a lot going on in that area right now. NOAA's actually looking at all the alert modalities, NOAA Weather Radio, the weather apps, and looking at the use of GPS technology and being able to actually pinpoint that information, and also trying to, really look at how the public gets their information. How many of these modalities do they use? How many of them are geospatial and provide that information? And then what is the quality of that geospatial information? What really needs to be there so that people can understand timing information, impact information. So there's a lot of work being done that. I'm actually involved in that study right now.
Do you know, Laura, and I would love to hear from Kevin, and Rick and I have talked about this a little bit, but they're kind of embedded in the Weather Service. But do you, Laura, know anything about what I call the artificial restraint put on the Weather Service by AccuWeather for developing more digital products, especially mobile apps?
I don't know that I can directly speak to that. I bet Kevin can do that better than I can.
Yeah, I guess I could.
Yeah.
Go, Kevin.
I mean, the bigger thing is, I think we don't want to get in the way of someone who wants to innovate. Say, I know, Bill, I guess you had a weather app. We don't want to stand in the way of innovation since we're a government agency. We're here as sort of the backbone of the infrastructure as far as models and radar and forecasting, but we don't want to stand in the way of commerce. So if there's profit to be made, say in a TV market or with a weather app or something like that, AccuWeather as well, any kind of private company, we don't want to get in the way of private enterprise. Our job is to sort of support private enterprise from maybe a more background role.
But here's my counter to that. There's no question. And when Mike Smith was here, we backed him into a corner on this. There is no question that there is an artificial restriction in this app, and I shouldn't say digital, in this app area placed on the Weather Service. Completely understand your point, but if you're going to use that logic, the Weather Service should have never developed a website.
Well, we had a lot of problems in those early days too.
Well, yeah, sure, but you got to go through and work these things out. But what's the goal? The goal is to protect lives and property, right? Isn't that the part of the mission statement?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And so if you're going to do a website, and for a while websites were the thing until Steve Jobs invented the iPhone, okay? So you evolved, and who knows the timing and how difficult it was, okay, fine. But you evolved into a website, therefore you should evolve to an app, but there is a restriction being placed.
You know what? I will deny any accountability for saying this, but this might be a good question to say for next week with a guest. We have somebody from Weather Service headquarters on next week. So,
okay.
Right, Bill?
Right. That's right. The COO of the Weather Service. I didn't know
that's
they had
right.
such a
Okay,
thing.
okay, good.
Just tell him Kevin Law said that to ask you.
But I'm watching Kevin on the feed here, and I see this strain on the face when and I commend you for staying within the bounds that you're supposed to. But at the same time, I want to ask Louis Ussolini this question: why?
You'll have your chance next week.
Yeah, why was the Weather Service allowed to have a website? And then was that some sort of mistake on somebody's part? Oh well, we shouldn't have let them do that. Now we can't let them have an app.
Right. Well, let me say too that the next generation of warning communication and the way we do warnings is probably going to come through facets. So I will indeed be interested in how that starts to develop as a means of communicating warning information. How are they going to do that? I don't think it's ever been sort of laid out there in those plans, but part of the MAP study goes along with facets, and we're going to get NSSL to fund the MAP study to sort of prove that facets is necessary because of geolocation. You have to have that geolocation, and people have to know where they are to know if they're in danger. Mm-hmm. So how are they going to, if you look at the facets commercials and the videos, it looks like everybody's on their phone. So on some level, there's going to be, and you could say WEA as well, the wireless alert network as well. Mm-hmm. is government run and it's free. And so there are avenues there. But as far as developing, let's say, a commercial app where we're providing weather forecasts or information, I think that's probably where the real rub is as far as making a profit.
Well, it seems like though that the Weather Service could have partners that would adhere to some set of standards to use the data appropriately, because the NDFD and the warning process are all superb, and the data's there if private enterprise would step into the void and do that, and probably could do what Kevin is talking about. Provide apps that would take Weather Service data and make it usable for that, for the end user.
Right. Well, look, there's always going to be a role for government and private, especially with that partnership and relationship that we have. I mean, it started sort of, back in the day, it was the Doppler 5000 or something, but all those NEXRADs, unless a television station owned their own C-band or X-band radar, they were all using the NEXRAD network on some level, and they were calling it their own thing. So it's sort of confusion. And I sometimes I get that question: do y'all use the Doppler, 1 million or whatever the names are in different markets? But it's all a part of that NEXRAD network that, television stations, private enterprise, it would be very difficult to pay for supercomputing or upper air soundings or, heaven forbid, the NEXRAD radar. I mean, it's millions and millions and millions of dollars to try to fund something like that. So there will always be a role for government versus private enterprise, and each serves, I think, that function.
Well, I would worry that the current administration, though, might gut the human side of that in order to, privatize that portion of it, but leave the observational capacity, where it is, and use the tax dollars for that. And I really have a fear of that in this next administration.
Well, I don't know. I mean, again, if our mission is to save lives and property, I think that's probably a little bit of a stretch that the human side of it would be, taken. Could you imagine, having a warning situation, something that's very serious, like an April 27th, and sorry, you didn't pay your monthly subscription, so we can't give you any warnings. I mean, you could imagine a scenario like that, and thousands and thousands of people dying because they can't afford that. So there is a role of government to protect its citizens. I mean, it's probably written right there in the Constitution. So we take that role and apply it here. And I think there's always going to be a weather safety component to protect their citizens. But private interests have companies and railways and airlines, and there's all kind of roles, many more that I'm not even thinking of.
Plenty to keep them busy. There's no question about it.
Hey,
so, Kevin, what else are y'all? Oh, I'm sorry, Rick. Go ahead.
Well, I was just, before we move on, I was going to go back real quick and ask Laura something. You were talking about the directionally disabled or disadvantaged or whatever, and it is true. We get a lot of we get it in the Weather Service too. We get a lot of public questions. What about Moore? What about Norman? What about, but it's not just from the public. And Kevin has probably experienced this too when we do a conference call with emergency managers and public safety officials, people that know geography, people that are well informed about the weather and well informed. We also get that from them. Is that a separate thing? Is that something you've studied or you're going to look at in your research? I mean, it's the same kind of phenomenon, but it's different somehow. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it is a little bit different. And that goes back to kind of that other side of the equation is they need that information and they need it quickly and they want it directly from the source. It's what we were talking about, personally touching James Spann. They're going to want that direct connection because for the emergency manager, a lot of times they've got to defend whatever decisions they're going to make. And so they want that information directly about their specific location. Yeah. And so they want to ask that question directly, get that answer from the official source so that when they make that decision, they can use it. So it's really not a directional issue for them. Right. It's more getting that official information.
Yeah, I didn't think so. I thought it was interesting though there's a parallel there, but it's very, very different.
Yes,
Rick. Well, that we've worked really hard to make ourselves indispensable to some of these folks, especially emergency management, and they've come to totally rely on us. Yeah. And we do some of that hand-holding, which, especially for emergency management, I think a move I've gone to here is during that decision support hour. I give them a whole hour and say, okay, this is y'all's hour. Ask me any questions. Let's get it all on the table now, and we'll do some of that. Even if it comes down to some hand holding, which is fine. That's I think that's our job, or part of our job at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't mind doing that.
No, not at all.
So Kevin, your former boss, MIC, Jim Stefkovich, has retired, and I guess we'll have a party for him on Thursday. What's going on in the office right now in terms of replacing him, and how are y'all staffing without a chief?
Oh, chaos. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, let's just stick to the weather. I don't think I want to talk about staffing issues and that thing. But it'll probably be a while. I mean, it's very slow now. We don't have some funding that probably is necessary to hire a lot of the positions back, at least right away. So we're having to make some decisions about what positions need to be filled or backfilled. So, it may be a year or so before we can get that spot refilled. But I feel confident, and Jim's worked really hard over the past decade or more to put this office in a very good position to where, and he says it best, that he wouldn't be missed. And we've worked really hard on our program here. We've staffed well, and we've staffed appropriately, and more importantly. And so I think he's left it in about as good a shape as it can possibly be. And John and I, John DeBlock, the WCM here, we're going to split time on his position. And the MIC role is very critical to the infrastructure of our office as far as admin and things. So there's a lot of things that have to be taken care of, and there's a lot of responsibility on the MIC position here. To take care of sort of the almost behind the scenes that has nothing to do with weather or forecasting anymore. It's just everything from property and what we own here all the way to the contract to mow the yard outside. So it's a lot of those kind of responsibilities that'll fall to John and I. And so we're going to split time at least until it gets filled.
Yeah, y'all have had some success in recent years with false alarm rates and various statistics. Kevin, what are some successes from 2016? Talk about the year in review.
Yeah, 2016 was our best year so far. Our false alarm rate, we actually got it down to 28% this past year with a POD of 74%. So that's the best year that we've had since we've been on this program. And I was running through the numbers to wrap up 2016, and I think the number, more than false alarm, the number I'm most proud of here is that we're getting to a point, because the data is sort of, everything's before April 27th and then after April 27th. So that was sort of the turning point on when we decided it was time to make some changes. And we're about equal number of tornadoes before and after those events. So we started back in 2007, when we got away from the county warnings in October 1st of 2007, we went to the polygon error. So I sort of kept it oranges to oranges. And we're getting to about to where the numbers of tornadoes are the same. So 2007 through 2011, and then 2012 through current, we're about the same number. So it's statistically significant. And the thing I'm most proud of is the number of warnings, just the sheer number as far as how many warnings this office was putting out has dropped by 70%. And so we're only warning at 30% the rate that we were before 2011. And I think that's a very an incredible thing. In fact, I got the numbers here in front of me. And but in those 5 years, 2007 to 2011, those 4 years there, we issued 533 tornado warnings. Since 2011, we've only issued 166, and we've had the same number of tornadoes. So just not putting people under a warning so often, I think, has sort of led to, hey, if you are under a warning, which is now very rare, you better take it serious.
Well, that's just a huge success story, Kevin. How have you done it?
A couple things. We started looking at, and I brought in some independent students. Noah has a Holling scholarship, and to earn your Holling scholarship, you have to work in a field office or a line office, a NOAA line office during your summers. And so I brought a lot of students in over multiple summers so I could get an independent look at where we were going in the direction. And we basically just looked at every event. Some events in our past we would do very well, and some events we wouldn't do so well. So we tried to sort of separate what was happening between our successes and the failures. And so we started looking at the science behind that, and we also started looking at the staffing. One thing that the Weather Service sort of promotes is that everybody should be able to do every single job very well. And one thing that I wanted to promote here was that we wanted to put people in the right positions where they were a fit. There's some people who naturally gravitate toward warning desk. There's some people who naturally gravitate toward social media. There's some people who naturally gravitate toward forecasting. So I wanted to promote that in this office, and the people who are warning forecasters, they spend a majority of their time studying warnings, whether it's here or if it's in Wichita or if it's in Dallas or wherever there's action going on. They always have GR2 analysts up, and they're watching what other offices' philosophies are in warning. So they're studying it from home here in the office on a down day. And those are the kind of people who I want in the warning desk and on the when a severe weather happens. Those people need to be on the desk. It's sort of like fielding a baseball team. You would never expect Derek Jeter to be catching. He always plays shortstop. It doesn't matter if it's game 1, game 162, or the World Series. He's always at shortstop because that gives the Yankees, or did give the Yankees, the best chance of winning. And that's what we want to do here, a very similar kind of strategy.
So how has the workforce reacted to that, Kevin?
Well, look, like we talked about before, there's a culture of that. And in fact, in the Weather Service in general, the only school that forecasters go to now is basically radar school. It used to be for weeks, 6 and 8 weeks back in the day, and now it's only a few days. And a lot of it's independent study and that kind of thing. But I thought really we were forcing people into positions that they didn't necessarily feel comfortable in doing. And that is just a flawed strategy on our part. And there's something, it's almost like we talked about with winter weather and the emotion wrapped around it. There's something about being the guy who pulls the trigger on a warning that seems to sort of validate their existence. And I just don't agree with that philosophy at all, because I can sit out there and issue the best warnings that I possibly can. And if we can't communicate it because the communicator is me, for example, I can't communicate worth anything. So it doesn't make sense to put me in a communicator role and to force me into that spot where I don't feel comfortable, because there's not going to be a high level of success with me there. A good example is the event we had yesterday. We put these graphics. I think Kevin Steele talked about the graphics that we put up. Well, I was doing some of that yesterday, and it's not a natural role for me. So I was really having to ask other people questions and disrupting almost office operations just because I wasn't as comfortable doing posting graphics and manipulating those graphics in PowerPoint and other things that other people who were here would have been. So I was thinking to myself just yesterday how it doesn't make sense that I'm sitting here trying to struggle through this when there's people here who can do it in less than a minute. So that's sort of what I'm talking about. And I don't know, and Rick, you may want to chime in on this, but there seems to be some kind of weird self-worth that's tied into warning operations and being the guy who pulls the trigger. And people feel like they have to be good at that to almost, to have an existence or to be something worthwhile to an office. And I think that's just a flawed philosophy.
Yeah, I've seen some of that at different offices, and I see that being a thing. Some people naturally gravitate toward that. We've got people in our office who will jump at the chance to issue warnings, and it's usually the people you described who are watching every storm. If it's a clear and sunny day here, they're watching what's going on in Birmingham or Huntsville or Nashville or wherever and following along on GR2. They're into it, and they're studying it. They're students of it, so they're naturally drawn to it. There's other people in the office who really are not that comfortable with it, and they just naturally end up doing something else. I'll do the graphics, I'll do the TAFs, I'll do the grids, I'll do something else. So yeah, I think there's some of that. I completely agree with you. I mean, I don't think that that's necessary in the Weather Service. I mean, I think that everybody's got a job to do, and everybody in the office during a severe weather event contributes no matter what they're doing. So you don't have to be the person that's pulling the trigger or making the decision or, I know that I've seen in different offices throughout my career, people keeping counts of, well, I issued more tornado warnings than anybody else this year, and I did this warning and that warning, and that's all good. And if you want to be proud of it, be proud of it. That's good to be proud of your job and your work that you do, but it shouldn't be something that you have to have to validate your existence or to make you feel like you're worthy of working at the Weather Service.
So Kevin, long as we've got John Murphy next week here, what should we be asking him as the National Weather Service COO about Evolve NWS?
Yeah, Kevin.
Really?
We know Rick's going to be here asking all the hard questions next week, but
somehow I don't think Rick's going to show up next week.
Actually, we'll
sick.
talk about that later.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Rick had a previous commitment.
Right. I got a letter from home. I'll send it to you.
Sick note. Look, there's a lot of things you could ask, but I think really probably the bigger thing now is if you talk about direction, there seems to be a lot of angst about the direction and the vision of how the entire weather service enterprise just as a whole, what direction we're going to be going in. And there seems to be, even though I feel like senior level management has gone out of its way to certainly make themselves available as much as they can and going out of their way to sort of explain it. There just seems to be so many rumors seem to run the day, and there's so many back channel chatters, and we just there just seems to be such a disconnect between the folks in Washington and the folks that serve the customers out in the field. And the field people think they're the backbone of the Weather Service. The headquarters people probably feel the same way about what they do there, and it's almost like a weird competition a little bit. But I just think we've got to get the folks in Washington to understand what our role is out here a little better, and to understand that local management in all these 122 field offices, we're all on the same side. We all have the same mission, and we sort of need them to understand that we are, a part of the backbone structure that makes the thing sort of work. And so I think, that, and I'm sure John will talk about some of that next week, but there's certainly a vision out there. And I think most people agree with the vision that, we need to be out selling our services, not just forecasts. We are a service organization, and I think they've done a pretty good job promoting that. But I think there's a lot of angst and a lot of offices that need to hear a resounding message and to feel a little bit more secure with the direction that we're going. So,
well, now
and Bill, one thing I would.
Oh, sorry,
I'm
Rick.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to chime in. One thing I would contribute is there is a lot of angst, and there's a lot of things going on now. The government in general and the Weather Service in particular, there's all these things that have come together now that really don't have anything to do with each other, but all together, it's really adding up. You've got this Evolve, or the operations workforce analysis. How's the Weather Service going to move forward in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years? That's going on. At the same time, the Weather Service, as seems like always, but this year in particular, has some budget issues that are impacting things. Has nothing to do with that. Has nothing to do with the third thing, which is a new administration coming in. There's a lot of uncertainty with that. I mean, I think the transition's going well so far, but you just never know. So I think all of that combined, those three unrelated things, are just combining, not just in the Weather Service, but in government in general. But if we're talking Weather Service specifically, and Kevin, I don't know if you can agree, I don't know if you'll agree with that too, but I mean, it just feels like there's a lot going on right now. And John may not be able to address all of that, but it might be interesting to talk some about the transition, what's going on with that between the administrations. I know there's meetings and there's a whole process that goes on that he may be able to talk about that might be pretty interesting.
Yeah, and I've heard the same thing. The transition is going really well, and the new administration really likes the Weather Service organization and in general. And again, it comes down to what our mission is in saving lives, and I think that's just something that's going to be critical to our success going forward, and we can certainly survive on that. But again, I think to Rick's point and what I said earlier is this: we've got to stick to our services as well, and we really serve a community, the states, and the emergency management, and with this life-saving information. I think that's just a critical component to all this.
But it seems like, Kevin, that the McKinsey report picked up on that.
It certainly did, and we expected it too. But again, it's just like anything else. If your personal budget, let's say, if your personal budget starts to get constrained, there's certain things that you're going to have to make decisions about, and there may be some things that need to be cut. And if they have to start looking at that, and I'm not saying that's going to happen, but if decisions have to be made because of budget constraints or staffing concerns or whatever, and so who's going to make those decisions, and what's that vision going forward? And I think the entire government is faced with some of that on some level.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very interesting 4 years. There's no question about that. So Dr. Laura, what are some of the cool things you're working on over there that you can talk about?
Well, we're getting ready to start our second round of the Vortex Southeast tornado research. Last year, we looked at the public's response to the spring severe weather season, which there really wasn't much of one last season. And so this season, and for the next 2 seasons, we're going to be doing a household cohort study. We're going to talk to up to 200 households and get a baseline of information about how they get their weather information and their perceptions of severe weather. And then we're going to resurvey them after particular events through 3 or 4 months of the severe weather season. So we hope to get some very interesting information about particular communities, people who live in particular types of structures, such as manufactured homes, people who live in vulnerable areas, people who have difficulty getting to shelters. So we should have some pretty good information when we're done.
That's exciting, and I'm sure you'll come back and share it with us, won't you?
Be glad to.
I guess it's that time of the week, Brian Peters, where we do picks of the week.
All right.
So we'll start with you.
All right. Well, as I've said many times, I'm a visual person, and I was going through one of my favorite sites, which is one that Kevin Sully got me onto, with the Boston Globe, and I ran across one called Winter is Coming, and it's a wonderful collection of a variety of winter-type scenes, and so I'll pick that site.
Outstanding. That sounds great. So I guess you were excited about Florida State's big victory?
Oh, yes. I thought they had lost when they ran the point after back, but I didn't know you only got 2 points for that. Learned something new, and was happy because that kept us a point ahead.
Exactly. That was a miraculous game. So good. You'll probably be in the top 5 next year, I imagine.
I hope so.
We'll see how that goes. Kevin Laws, what's your pick of the week?
I went with Pivotal Weather. It's sort of a newer weather site out there that has a lot of good information on it. And as you know, I'm a sort of an old school forecaster, and I love soundings, and it gives you good information toward forecast soundings and looking at those. So I always enjoy doing that. So Pivotal Weather for me. So
does it have good simulated reflectivity and snow depth maps? That's all we care about.
I wouldn't know.
Okay. It's so nice to have you on the show again, Kevin. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Dr. Laura, do you have a pick of the week?
I do. My recommendation is to follow your regional WFOs on Twitter. For me, my regional offices are at National Weather Service Birmingham and at National Weather Service Jackson, Mississippi.
Outstanding. Those are
great suggestion there, Dr. Myers.
Of
Thank
course.
you.
She's always good for several. So it's good to have you on the show tonight, Dr. Laura.
Thanks for having me.
Rick Smith, so good to see you. I hope you will be here next week. But
we'll talk. My pick of the week actually goes all the way back to the beginning of the show. Dr. Marshall Shepard wrote a couple of different pieces, but one that he wrote about the winter forecasts that are out there. It's pretty short, and he had 2 distinct points he made in there. So I kind of had that pick of the week even before I knew he was on the show. So that worked out well. And Boomer Sooner, we're going to talk about winning games and being proud. Proud of our Sooners from pulling for the Sugar Bowl victory last night against Auburn. Sorry, had to throw that
Big game
in
Bob, big game Bob. But
Yeah, yeah.
SEC looked bad again. So
Well.
thanks for that. But congratulations on the big win to all the Sooner fans. I'm sure you'll be in the top 5 next year, probably too.
there. Well, we'll see. Sometimes that's not a good thing, but we'll see what happens.
Well, if James were here, he would give me the foghorn because I don't have a pick of the week. So somebody will have to just make an artificial one, and maybe he can edit it in. But as we've alluded to, we will have John Murphy, the National Weather Service Chief Operating Officer, next week. We'll be talking aviation when we get back onto a 23rd show, because next week's show is going to be on Tuesday night because I have a team in the national championship. So I'm excited about that. We're looking for a guest for the week after on Monday, the 16th, and then the 23rd, we'll have Stephen Kearney. Will be talking about aviation, and then we've got several holes in the schedule over the next several weeks. So if you got a guest suggestion, send those to us. We love all those guest suggestions. We occasionally do an email segment. And whenever Aubrey gets around to it again, it'll probably be pretty extensive, but send those emails to email@weatherbrains.com. We all get those, and we love to see when you email us. And we appreciate you all staying up very late tonight. We almost made it back to James. Sometimes we leave it with him with about 25 minutes to go. Tonight we'll only leave it with about 10 minutes to go before we get out of here. But we do usually produce the show on Monday nights. The last couple of weeks we've been on a weird schedule for the holidays. One more week of that, and then we'll return. We'll be approaching our 11th year. It's just amazing, Brian Peters.
Good Lord. Have we been doing this that long?
We are almost to show 575. That's just crazy.
Wow.
So, but we love doing it, and we stay for the great company. Certainly not for the great salaries, is it, Brian Peters?
No, absolutely not. Yeah, I can remember when we first got started, we thought, well, this is just a little lark. Let's see what happens. We'll just do this for a couple of weeks and see.
Yeah,
11 years later.
One good thing about James Spann, the robot that he is, has allowed us to stay. I mean, we've never missed a show, not one single week that we've been doing this. So that's quite an accomplishment. So,
and I have to say something bad about him because he's changing up how we're doing our storm reporting from the field with a winter weather event. So,
how's that?
He's always coming up with some new way to do it, and of course he wouldn't do that like the week before. We have to do it the day before.
So what will he have you doing on?
We're going to make use of Facebook Live.
Oh, there you go. I'm glad Kevin's not here because his
his
he
head
would need an
explode.
extra roll of duct tape probably to keep his head from exploding. But
I'm going to be anxious to see if he goes to Tampa, Florida.
Yeah, I am too. That's going to be really interesting. So, any other business that we have to bring before this august group tonight? Well, Brian Peters, I'd take a motion that we adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Can I get a second?
Good night. Thank you, Dr. Myers. Thank you, Kevin.
I think Brian's already out of here. He's like the Alabama football players. They're not shaking hands again. They're getting out of here. So.
Hey, I've got a forecast for a radio station to do.
Oh, go do it, Brian. Well, good. All right. Well, that's the show, guys. We'll see you next week.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Good night. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Laura. Good to see y'all.
Bye.
See you, Rick.
I listen to that. I love listening to the show later in the week after we've done it because I'm so busy. I don't have time to really pay attention to everything. Ooh, in fact, we have a light out up here. A light has burned out. But that's okay. Engineer Roy will fix that tomorrow. So this is that magical simulcast here. Look at that. We have 29 people still watching dead air. I've always been baffled by that. So what we have here, we've got WeatherBrains, the post show, and Song of the Night on Periscope. It's a simulcast. But those watching WeatherBrains, thank you. I thought that was a great show, and I hate having to miss the end discussion, but I will be listening tomorrow in the car. But great to have Kevin Laws of the Weather Service in Birmingham, Dr. Laura Myers of the University of Alabama, social scientist, and Dr. Marshall Shepard of the University of Georgia, host of Weather Geeks and the Weather Channel. Very interesting discussion on so many fronts. And again, that show could have gone on for a long time. So WeatherBrains listeners, thank you all for watching. We'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.